Welcome to the Scaling Tech Podcast, where we help you manage your growing engineering team. Through expert interviews, we help you navigate the challenges of leading, hiring, growing, and nurturing your tech team to deliver the value your customers demand. Brought to you by AgilityFeat.com, experts in staffing engineering teams in Latin America for clients globally.
We all have to check ourselves, even among us who live and breathe this market, we have to be careful of our assumptions. Even a country like Haiti's got 11 million people. You mean to tell me you can't find 150 super bright people who could be great programmers like David talks about? Of course you could. So I don't think I think we're not totally fair sometimes, even Central America, Panama, you see it yourself, I'm sure. El Salvador's got some interesting players. So there's a lot of good stuff going on out there.
Welcome to the Scaling Tech Podcast, the podcast for leaders of growing software engineering teams. I'm Arin Sime here with my co-host, David Alfaro. How are you doing today, David?
I'm doing very good, very good. Actually, today for our episode, I have to recognize I was fired up more than usual. It was fun. It was a lot of good discussions there. So
yeah,
I think people are going to enjoy that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is today's episode is all about nearshoring, which is a topic that you and I know very well. We've based our careers around. In fact, when I first met you back in 2011, around there, as we talked about in our first episode of the Scaling Tech Podcast, there was some tweets involved and social media, but you were also running a website about agile nearshoring, and you were putting together an event on agile nearshoring that I reached out to you about. So this is something you and I have thought about a lot over the last 12 years. But today we're going to speak with another expert on nearshoring, Kirk Laughlin, who's the founder of Nearshore Americas. What did you think about this conversation? Any particular takeaways for you?
Well, Kirk has a very interesting context. I mean, the audience is going to get the benefit of having multiple contexts from different perspectives and different areas in Latin America about how to do nearshoring right. I think that my vision about the topic is a little bit more radical, but you know me, how you are used to bear with me with that
right
feature of mine. But yeah, so having the different perspectives and the final integration that we did at the end, I think is a very good one, and we're going to enjoy that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this is a wonderful conversation, and so let's get to it. Our conversation with Kirk Laughlin on nearshoring. Kirk Laughlin is the founder and chief analyst at nearshore.americas.com, which he founded in 2009 to stimulate engagement between customers, investors, service providers, regional and country-based investment agencies in the nearshore technology services industry. Nearshore Americas is the foremost publisher of independent news and analysis about the nearshore industry in the Americas, and Kirk has organized events with leaders from around Latin America and the Caribbean. Welcome to the Scaling Tech Podcast, Kirk.
Thanks, Arin. Great to see you guys.
It's great to have you here. Thanks for joining us. I think the last time we got to meet up in person was around 2015. We had dinner at a restaurant in Escazú, Costa Rica, when I was living there, and we got to talk about nearshoring and our views of the marketplace at that time. A lot has happened since then. It's definitely time for us to catch up on this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot has changed. It's 7 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get started, though. For those who may not be familiar, our listeners to this podcast are engineering leaders of growing technical teams. They may or may not be familiar with nearshoring. So let's start with a definition of what is nearshoring and what different types of things would you nearshore?
Right. So the key thing to remember in nearshoring is it has broad application horizontally. So it's obviously has relevance to those of us who are familiar with with custom software services performed in Latin America, the Caribbean, but also that goes across a whole range of off or business functions at a professional level. So that's kind of the domain we live in. But of course, there's manufacturing nearshoring, and that term seems to be picking up a lot with all of the supply chain questions in China and
Oh, sure.
quote unquote work coming back and all that. But for
Mhm.
us, when we talk about nearshoring, we kind of came to the conclusion that, let's be honest, Chile and Argentina and Uruguay are not exactly close or near to New York City or most US cities. However, this classic three-legged pillars or three-legged stool of nearshore, I think each one of them is extremely important. One of which would be obviously culture and
Mhm.
all of the advantages we all get to experience around what I like to say is getting on the same page faster. And then, of course, you have proximity, being able to, generally get to the destination relatively quickly. Lots of good flights, direct in most cases, and same day. I mean, there's people we know in Texas and Florida get to go down to their partners and be back the same day. But the big one relative to nearshore, which I think is super important, is this time zone compatibility. So because of that, and as we positioned our business from the very very beginning, we thought, well, the entire South American continent qualifies because it's not that hard. I know there are times when I think Brazil's 2 or 3 hours ahead or something, but overall, that's our definition on nearshore, and it seems to have really picked up. There's been a greater level of awareness, I'd say, in the last few years, generally, from what I've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think yeah, it is. Sometimes you forget how much further east, like Buenos Aires is than say San Francisco. But the reality is, you can still work, you can still coordinate in the same workday together,
Exactly.
right? There are still convenient times that you can have a conversation, and that's huge for collaboration. I mean, you know, I don't know how proximity is definitely nice for manufacturing. I don't know as much about that, but in software development, what we do and the type of nearshoring that we focus on at AgilityFeat, having that ability to collaborate in a good amount of overlap during the day is so important to something like software development, because you are making decisions every day.
Mm-hmm.
There's a creative process there that's ongoing, and 12-hour time zone differences are just too much.
No doubt. Yeah, I think I just feel like the arc or the direction that the IT world has gone in general favors those who can be nimble
Mhm.
and meet the business imperative, and it's all about accuracy and speed and agility, and those things all put the nearshore in an advantageous position against its so-called competitors worldwide.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kirk, uh, when the nearshoring came about, specifically related to software development, it was clear that the main motivation behind that interest was savings
Yeah.
uh, at some point. Now, it, I would like to hear your thoughts and reactions to my observation lately. Is that yeah, still financial advantage is something that is still nearshoring is offering, specifically in software development. This is important that I clarify that. But what I'm seeing is that there is a motivation that at some point was very relegated to the bottom. Now is gaining more relevance, which is um, talent scarcity. It is that, I mean, it's becoming absolutely difficult in the United States
No
to come
question.
up with, I mean, it is. I, my prediction is that at some point, maybe not now, especially not this year, but at some point, I don't know, in I don't know, 20 years, something like that, out or maybe less, the economic factor is not going to be the determining factor of
Hmm.
going nearshore, but just finding talent.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think about that?
I think a lot of things, and I do think it's a bit destination influenced by the destination in terms of the intensity of the point you're making. I think there's no question the central point you're making about talent scarcity is super, super relevant, is always going to be a driver as long as that exists. But uh, I, uh, I still see that although there's a lot of claims that we're past the point of the economic thing, economic concerns or cost concerns being less relevant. I just think it's very hard to make that declaration because I think so many enterprises and those who are making decisions are looking at a spreadsheet and are looking at real costs and the total cost of outsourcing and the expected value out of that. And it's a factor that we know exists and is still an influence. But, in places like Costa Rica, David, that clearly it's obviously it's the most expensive place in Central America to do
Yeah,
export software.
I don't
But
hire in Costa Rica in my country anymore.
right,
Yeah,
right.
right. Yeah.
But yet the work is tremendous, right? There's so many great companies doing great work, and so many clients in the U.S. love to partner there.
Mhm.
So I think it's a little bit of both. But the one other thing that popped in my head when you're talking about the eventuality, I wonder about the eventuality of parity on the cost. And maybe that's kind of what you're saying too, that we're
Mhm.
at some point, somewhere along the line, maybe not this generation, but you've got to really wonder, are we moving in a direction? I mean, I've seen some amazing things in places like Guyana where there's a one wage at one level for quite talented folks. There's not a lot, but there's definitely talented people there. And then a regional staffing type aggregator who's looking in under every rock in Bolivia and Peru and who knows where comes in and hires this person and pays like 50% more because they have no understanding of the local wage. So suddenly that changes the dynamic. Not so great for the guy who was doing a nice job locally, but that's a representation of what's happening. There's so much willingness to go beyond borders, and I have a feeling that's going to raise wages in a sense.
Oh yeah, the developers are not. I mean, developers are the most brilliant people that you can know, and they realize this. And Arin can second this. I mean, we've talked with the developers that say, "Hey, you know that you're talking to me, and I am from Bolivia, but please know that I am not interested in being paid as a Bolivian." Yeah, I mean, we had this conversation, and I think that is a fair observation. Is they
Mm-hmm.
know that the gap is getting is not as what I mean that the gap uh, was existed mainly because people didn't know. I mean, the contractors didn't know about the gap, but now they know about the gap, and now they know that what is more important now is their talent.
Right.
So although again, I don't think it's going to happen soon,
Mm-hmm.
but I see happening a parity in the future. I
Yeah.
can see that.
Same here. Same here.
Yeah, I think in software development, especially, that's true. That there will be, to some degree, a certain global parity, right? And maybe to people making a developer's salary in San Francisco right now, they may see that going down over time.
Exactly.
But certainly for someone in most of Latin America, they're going to see that going up over time as we reach some sort of equilibrium on a more global level. And I think software development lends itself to that very well because so many of the skills can be self-taught. So if you're aware of what the marketplace needs and you've got a good internet connection and you're able to learn it, then you can more than ever compete now on a
True.
global level in a way that you couldn't before. And I think of software developers in particular, that's true. I'm curious from your sort of broader view of nearshoring in general, Kirk, do you see that same sort of trend in other areas?
Can I?
Go
But
ahead, David. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it is. I just found this article. It is from the CNBC. It's called "Next Frontier in Microsoft, Google, Amazon Cloud Battle is Over: A World Without Code." There is a paragraph that I want to read. It says, "At Microsoft, a simple run of the numbers on how many apps will be built in the next 5 years shows how critical low code and no code software will become. Microsoft expects 500 million new apps to be built in the next half decade, which is more than all the apps built in the last 40 years. If
Wow.
that's true, 40, 45, 450 million have to be built with a low code tool. I mean, well, low code, low code tool, let's set that apart. But it keeps saying there are not enough humans to code fast enough to build that many. Professional developers should focus on harder challenges than other expense submission forms or approval forms. So, whatever, I mean, the discussion on low code and uh, no code and low code things is another topic. But the point is, there are not enough humans to build, not developers, humans to build all the needed applications in the next 5 years.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean,
Well,
that plays a role in the gap. That plays a role.
right. And let me just kind of hit on that, but also hit on what you're about to talk about, Arin. Is I think on one hand, there's no question that for lack of a better description, digital transformation trends are. I'm seeing no sign of slowing, and that data point you're bringing up, David, is exactly that point. At the same time, on the kind of other side of the world, we write a lot about as back office, BPO, customer service, which, by the way, a good portion of that market has grown more sophisticated. There are a much greater amount of digital tools and solutions that are part of that experience, and I think it still gets underrated in that regard. But I do think Amazon is in the midst of laying off lots of people at their organization, and there's no question that that's going to filter down into the many of the nearshore customer service providers, as well as, and I've asked my editorial team to look into this. Even Amazon has its own delivery center in Costa Rica. It's one of the largest employers there. And it'd be very interesting to see, will there be, would the foot be taken off the gas? And if so, will those people be able to reorient themselves and maybe move in the direction of no code, low code? That really hit me once about a year ago. I was touring a delivery center with one of the biggest outsourcers in our industry, software. And I mean, the head there was just like, he was scratching his head, like, where can I go to find people? Like, he was just at wit's end. And it was funny because at the same time, we were having a conversation with ProColumbia, talking about a call center business. And that software guy was like, wow, can I get some of those people to work for me? And that, I think that we might see more of that. To David's point, I mean, I think it'll all come down to how competent or how savvy will the nearshore software players be in opening the gates and making those kind of people productive.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, what the strategy that I've been following in the last couple of years is focusing more uh, in talent acquisition strategy rather than being reactive to the events uh, uh, of hiring needs. So instead of me sitting and waiting for someone to ask me for developers, what I do is I am constantly working
Mm-hmm.
on filling that pipe
Wow.
of candidates. I mean, because it's different, and that needs an
Yeah.
entire strategy. How you keep talking with developers, how you attract them, how you make a network of recruiters in Latin America, how you sound honest, and you are honest, how you are and sound honest and
Mm-hmm.
attractive to the developers. When Arin and I started, 12 years ago, I mean, we didn't have to we didn't have to make any sales speech to any developer. We only have to offer the money. That's it. Now I have to prepare a very attractive sales speech to any
Right.
developer beyond the money.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, we are cool. You're going to grow here. I mean, it's different. It's different, and
Yeah.
and that trend is going to continue.
Yeah,
I've heard a
back
lot.
then we were. Well, sorry, Kirk. We were kind of competing with local traditional firms.
Mm-hmm.
Now there is, more of a global marketplace, and so it's not just about paying more than the local bank will pay for software developers doing work that they may or may not be excited about.
Right.
In fact,
So
let me tell you this: right now, our biggest competitors in South America, from a recruiting standpoint, is not America, is not North America, is Europe.
Oh,
Right now, Europe and Netherlands are going like crazy hunting down developers in South America.
oh, that sounds like a great story idea. Let's get talk about that. I've never heard that.
Yep,
That's very
yep, yep,
interesting.
yep, yep.
Wow.
So they are offering citizenship sponsorship, and so it's crazy. It's just
Wow.
crazy.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So again, I mean, the market is. I mean, that gap, that conversation of being simpler now is more sophisticated. Uh, that's why my reasoning of that parity that we were talking about cost and talent scarcity. I mean, that's we are. I suspect we are going to be closer than we thought to that,
Okay. Fair enough.
and I think we are going to transition to a different way of dealing with talent. Talent, and I love the word talent because it is very respectful and meritorious of the brains we have in Latin America,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the fact that the wages are not, in my opinion, I mean that's what I'm seeing. It is like it is just that the wages are getting normalized. So
Got it.
I still can make the argument for yeah, you're going to save some money here. I mean, I don't know. I mean, 20%, 25%, let's say. Uh, but don't count on that for the
Right.
next 10 years. I mean, for now, that's the way it is.
Right.
It is good. Just think that the most significant problem you're going to solve is talent scarcity.
It's such an interesting thing to think about because then you, as the decision maker, the client, they're looking at that. It's like, okay, you make a good point. That's valid. But then they're also thinking about, well, if I do hire in the U.S., what what is the expected amount of attrition, and what is the total cost? What insurance burdens do I have to carry? And do you wonder in this continuum if there's greater credit given to a diversity of thought, like a different perspective, a flat out different perspective, only gained through somebody from a significantly different culture, background,
Right.
where just being able to communicate it effectively too is important. But I've heard that a lot, especially with the quality of design, the design sense of certain programmers in different parts of Latin America is phenomenal, and
Yeah.
that maybe becomes more appreciated.
And I would say something else. Is like the other day was reading this article that says this is not new. It says tech new firm fined for firing worker who refused to open webcam. It doesn't sound like interesting. The interesting part is that the tech firm was in California and the
Mm,
firing worker was in Netherlands. And
interesting.
the courts, I mean the the Netherlands judicial system uh, uh, gave reason to the local worker against the American firm, and
Oh,
and I think that is quite that's the important thing. I think it is that those kind of things doesn't happen between United States and Latin America because different.
yeah.
It's a different system. In here
Uh,
we are. I mean,
yeah.
the governments are glad that they're having extra income somehow, some way. It's different.
Well, let me make one point and to stir the pot a little bit, David. I think if you catapult the worker friendly mindset of a lot of governments in Latin America, if they ever catapult themselves into the digital universe and get their hands too deeply into it, you could see that prospect of you know it could be a bull in a china shop, and I don't see any sign of it. But that point you just made, I think, is a very interesting point. They appreciate the extra income. That's a whole nother interesting area. If
Mm.
you're using Bolivian programmers, are you living up to the responsibilities you have as a taxpayer
Right,
employing those
right,
people? That
right.
that's very interesting, and we're watching closely to see how savvy governments are at doing that. And believe me, um, all of us, I'm sure, would really appreciate if the governments gave us more appreciation or realized the tremendous value of being able to employ somebody in their country at a great wage. They get to stay local and there's no brain drain. And not to get too deep into this, but one of the things that was so perplexing to me when we tried to engage Cuba back at the time I talked to you, Arin, we tried to convince the Cuban authorities of the tremendous value of our industry. And I ran into a brick wall because there isn't appreciation for entrepreneurism and
Right.
elimination of brain drain. Everyone else in the
Yeah.
world gets those things, but unfortunately, in some countries that don't, we don't have to get into political
Right.
discussion. But I get very excited about that part of it, that people can stay local and enrich their
Yeah.
societies, and
Oh
we can
yeah.
still develop good things.
Stay
Right.
local at the same time as expanding their own worldview and their connections. And
Totally.
the opposite is true too. I mean, that's certainly one of the things that I enjoy most about my career since having met David is getting to experience Costa Rican culture and so much of Latin America in general, and our clients too. When we have an opportunity to uh, bring a client to Latin America, do a in-person event together. We're in a couple of weeks after recording this, we'll be with a client in Panama, bringing together about 25 people from a number of different countries and across the client and our team. And that's actually the second time we've done this sort of event with that company. We did one in the past with them in Costa Rica too. So
Mm.
being able to do that type of, you know, that sort of cultural exchange, I think does it. I think it is tremendously valuable to us as individuals, but I think also you're on a more macro scale to the countries in Latin America if they're now hopefully not losing that talent to
Right.
somebody trying to get into the Bay Area because that's the only way they can work for a cool startup.
Sure.
To be able to stay home and do that, I think, is tremendously valuable. Uh, what sort of responsibility, Kirk, do nearshore employers have to the local communities? And
Well, it's a great question and segueing on this topic because it's very interesting from where we stand, and this is an important point. Remember, Nearshore America is available 24/7 to talk to anybody, and most of those discussions may well lead to a good interview and a good outcome because our whole job in this purpose is to provide authority and a as accurate as possible in understanding as to what's really going on in this market. And we have always found it very interesting when vendors are active or service providers are active in certain markets and they decide not to talk to us. And we always think that's a bit strange, isn't it? They're employing people in Kingston, Jamaica, or Tegucigalpa, or Monterrey, Mexico, and we might be in touch with a few people from their company, but not surprisingly, companies who don't know how to engage the media like us typically are not savvy in terms of social media, in terms of messaging, in terms of understanding what they're participating in is far greater than the idea that it's just their own P&L and they're got their heads down and nobody matters. It's only, our little fiefdom. Of course, that's a losing strategy. So we're obviously believe in the strength of a community, and we all participate in this industry, and we become stronger as an industry when we participate. We're transparent, we're mentoring, we're sharing. Don't forget, this is a little industry that's only 20 some years old. You look at the giant industries that were created over 100 years ago, look at the support the auto industry has gotten, or the building industry, or all these industries that have realized we need to work together. We need to have a voice. We need to set our priorities. In this case of nearshore, let's talk more about talent development across borders, across the whole region. So this all goes back to the point you asked about is there's one thing to kind of do window dressing and to call, we do corporate social responsibility and we get to put it on our website and all that. But you guys know it's a much deeper conversation. We know right away how much a employer, how they perceive their engagement in the community. And often it's spoken in the way they view their people and the way they interact with their people, and also what those employees are saying about their employer. And, just to kind of bottom line it, I just feel it's really important to talk about this, because you do still run across companies out there who are highly secretive and, moving in a direction that seems to be less, appreciative of how much that employer benefits. And don't forget, so many of these companies are benefiting from tax holidays and all kinds of advantages that you would think, or it's kind of like, wow, I get all this benefit. What do I do back into that community? How do I become a long-term valuable player? And I do think the vast majority of the time, the service providers behave in a way that they do appreciate it. But I just have a bigger vision that we can see more of that and more demonstrations of how important that relationship is.
Yeah. And in the other direction, kind of conversely, what do you think that governments in Latin America and the Caribbean should be doing to, maybe that they're not now, to better encourage both the nearshore operators themselves, the providers, as well as companies in the U.S. or Europe to look at their local economies?
Well, I can't help but bring up the example of what we've seen in Costa Rica, because it's just a remarkable model. It's in my opinion, the right way to do it. You have a dedicated agency, even better, that's privately funded, called CINDE, that looks entirely at the FDI, foreign direct investment opportunity. And they, for a country of 4 million, more or less, not even half the size of Guadalajara. I mean, it's unbelievable how smart that strategy is to be able to say, here's our job. We're going to do it really well. We're going to do it for a very long time. And then at the same time, you have groups like Procomer. And, I never know the difference between Procomer and Camtic, but Procomer is there to support the exporters and to get to know the exporters. And really, we know Michael Lopez, who's the Procomer representative in New York City. He's been there for at least as long as I've been running Nearshore Americas, like 13, 14, 15 years. And that's just remarkable, because there's not that many countries and governments who know their exporters in a deep way, who can speak with great authority on, oh, you're interested in a mobile app for a fintech an emerging fintech in French, in a Dutch language or something. I mean, it's having that familiarity is super important, and we're coming a long way here. So many of these governments not long ago were, and still to some degree are still looking for that, 5,000 job, labor intensive opportunity to create, economic growth. But more and more, we do see recognition of how important IT and BPO is. In countries like Colombia, it's become much more widely spoken about. You see stories about this in the newspaper frequently. So, so to kind of sum it up, I think we're moving in the right direction cautiously. There are many people we've met over the years. Peru comes to mind, but there's others, Mexico as well. The attitude often is, that's okay. We don't need help from the government. We'd rather not, and it just depends on where you are and some of the experiences some of these people have had in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. Chile comes to mind in the past for me of having put together a startup visa and trying to encourage entrepreneurs to work there, and then establish their companies there. What are there any particular examples that you see as really hopeful, positive examples of where a type of nearshoring is thriving in a particular region or a particular country, and how so?
Yeah, I'd love to highlight, and we were talking about earlier, David, Uruguay. I really admire the entrepreneurial spirit of that particular country. There's a lot of really smart folks realizing they have the competence and the skill set to work at a global level in software. And I just see a lot of confidence coming out of that market. There's a whole slew of really interesting young companies from there. But, it's not hard to look around and see other examples like that. We're a huge fan of Medellin, Colombia, really, really great university there. And, we kind of look at Medellin as the next Guadalajara. Guadalajara is obviously a super success story. But, I often say, Arin, there's smart people everywhere throughout this market. And, sometimes locations get dismissed unfairly.
Sure.
The Dominican Republic. There's several really impressive custom software companies in the Dominican Republic. Even one we just literally got to know recently. So I think that's one of the fun things about this market. And we all have to check ourselves, even among us who live and breathe this market, we have to be careful of our assumptions. Even a country like Haiti's got 11 million people. You mean to tell me you can't find 150 super bright people who could be great programmers like David talks about? Of course you could.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
so I don't think I think we're not totally fair sometimes. Even Central America, Panama, you see it yourself. I'm sure El Salvador has got some interesting players.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of good stuff going on out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I want to make a comment about Uruguay because I think there are a couple of reasons why Uruguay in particular is giving that impression, and I think it's a fair impression, by the way. Is I think that number one, Uruguayans they are very ambitious by nature. That is something in their culture. I lived there for 2 years, so I can see that. And the other thing that the government did brightly was to remove tax,
Mm-hmm.
revenue tax for any person or company that exports software. So meanwhile, in Costa Rica, you pay 3% or more in taxes. In Uruguay, you don't. And the reason they did that, the government was very explicit. They said we are going to do this because we want a tremendous growth in software development in our country. They said
Mhm.
that,
Right.
and there you go, and there you go. Who can see the results?
Did you see that? Did you see that come about, David, when you were down there?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, it works. I think it works, and it attracts. In fact, it attracts people from Argentina to move to Uruguay
Sure,
because of that.
absolutely.
So
That's right.
this is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll give a shout out here along those lines of sort of good, what I see as good policy too, and that part of what attracted me to Panama and setting up, we have an office there, and I have permanent residency there with my family. It was their Friendly Nations visa program to encourage business investment, and I think that's something that they do uh, well, and some of the rules have changed since I was in it, and obviously, whatever point in time you may be listening to this podcast, the rules may be different now too. But it was, I think a pretty simple process to set up a company, to be able to have residency around that, and in a country that, in Panama's case, obviously they're known for beyond the canal. They're known for banking, and so the general business environment there is a lot easier than a lot of other countries that I've seen in Latin America in terms of just setting up bank accounts and getting your company established and stuff like that. And through that program, it made it a lot easier for me as someone from the U.S. to be able to make that investment there. And now we hire there and contribute, to the local economy.
I know we did that
So
story interview with you a couple of years ago on that topic, and
yeah, that's right.
yeah, and
That's
that was
right.
quite helpful and quite insightful. We love that when you walk the walk and get to see it yourself and are willing to share.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But I think there's so much, potential that is still untapped. And I think, in Panama specifically, the example I would give there is that traditionally there's uh, the IT community there is very naturally very oriented around the banking system there. So when we try to hire software developers, they're not generally trained on the technologies that we're using with our clients, and from different industries, and so it becomes a little bit harder there. So if you're looking for C# developers, Microsoft.net type of developers, there's a larger pool of that in Panama, as opposed to we're staffing Ruby on Rails, React JS, more open source web technologies,
Hmm.
and it's a different, you see different pockets of that, I think, in different places, but some of the differences in local economies and what has traditionally been a driver of that economy, banking in the case of Panama, drives those technology sets as
Right.
well. And so I think one of the other effects that we'll see in software development, specifically in nearshoring, is hopefully a focus on a broader set of technologies and a more globally valuable set of technologies than what was just historically in that local economy.
Sure, definitely. Yeah, I look forward to it, and I'll be checking in with you in Panama next time I'm
Yeah,
coming through.
please do. Please do. Yeah, so we're starting to come towards the end of our time together, Kirk. But this has been a great conversation. I appreciate it. What do you see? Any what are the biggest opportunities or challenges you see to the future of nearshoring?
It's kind of one of the questions I pondered the entire time, Aaron, is kind of like, will this industry recognize how much it can continue to grow? I mean, will it aspire to what I think is just remarkable heights, or will it kind of be sort of like, oh, we got our 11% share of the global market. That's fine. We're going to go to the beach now. So
Right. We got our Amazon office, BPO office. We're done.
right. So that's what I'm looking for, and it's a sort of a broad question. It applies to the industry itself. It applies to the clients and the folks who drive this engine. It applies to the agencies and governments as well. I do think there's so much more growth ahead of us, but it's an us question. It's a community question, and it's a willingness to recognize that we're not just one little ecosystem, that there's a much bigger part to play.
Mhm.
And I feel pretty confident. I mean, we've come a long way in a dozen years, and I think that will continue to look pretty positive.
And what are some of the services that you provide in kind of in helping that community? Certainly, the content,
Sure.
excuse me, the content through Nearshore Americas. But I know you do work beyond that as well to help providers and
Yeah,
clients in the industry.
we're very involved with conversations lately about whether to start greenfield operations or whether to pursue acquisition. That's come up a lot lately. We've got a series of folks calling or reaching us from different parts of the world, not surprisingly, Eastern Europe. We had a great conversation with a gentleman last week in Miami on that topic. But we do have an advisory wing of our business that's quite instrumental in those kinds of conversations. And another group extending from that is this M&A consulting, where a greater amount of opportunity is identified with emerging entrepreneurs, growing great businesses in the region. So, despite the economic headwinds, I don't see that necessarily slowing down. And for us, the fundamental mission, which I said earlier, is just making sure we're as good as we can possibly be as a portal for good information. And I always want to give credit to the editorial team in our publication, because we set the bar pretty high. It's difficult to do news reporting from thousands of miles away in different languages and working with a culture that often isn't too transparent. But I do think folks like you guys and others, just the fact that you're doing this podcast is a great demonstration of that, believing that let's have some conversations. Let's talk about what we're doing. Let's continue to be part of this. And that gives me a lot, it keeps me happy. I still enjoy doing this, which, as you guys know, is a good thing when you still want to continue running businesses.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, but I know certainly I appreciate the work that you do in the industry, Kirk. So thank you very much, because it is a very helpful source of information
You
for
bet.
us. David, any other closing thoughts or comments, topics you want to bring up?
I yeah, something that Kirk said, it resonates a lot with what I've been thinking lately, and I think it's brilliant. It is uh, uh, when Kirk, you mentioned Haiti, is like, um, yeah, I mean, how you telling me that you cannot find 150 very
Right.
talented software developers? And the answer is definitely, the answer is yes. Uh, would it be challenging? Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely challenging. Uh, however, the again, the pressure for talent is going to grow so much that that pressure is going to push people like us to come up with the strategies, ideas, crazy ideas to
Yeah.
find those gems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somehow, somewhere, somehow.
Right.
And one of these ideas is, uh, there are still lots of very young software developers fresh out of college in Latin America that they are craving for just an opportunity, just a shot at
Hmm.
Mhm.
being at having the chance to work with or for an American company somehow, some way. So they
Sure.
are craving for that. But maybe they are not absolutely ready. Maybe they need some more time to get familiar with they need to actually be productive. And that is an opportunity right there. Uh,
Let me just, if you don't mind me asking, David, I'm very curious on this topic, because you painted the picture really well. When I'm a young 22-year-old, talented computer savvy or computer engineer, software engineer, or getting just started. And the world I grew up in, mainly publishing and editorial, and newspapers even, I gained a tremendous amount working inside the newsroom, working with my peers, having the face-to-face interaction with my teams. I would worry about an individual working remotely without that advantage at
Right.
22, 23 years old. What are your thoughts on that?
It boils down to having the right mentor. I mean, the right mentor makes a whole difference. In our case, what we do is the first step is uh, we re- we recruit like a tremendous amount of youngs young people like that. Then we screen them when we select the people that we want that we suspect they have the potential to learn the couple of things they need to learn to actually start being productive. Then we make a boot camp with them on top of them every week, couple of times per week to be sure that
Okay,
they are progressing. And then when we think that we are ready, then we do the next step, which is we have someone inside the target company that already knows it is a contractor of ours, but has been there for more than 5 years, and
hmm,
that person knows everything, and that person is in charge of supervising and taking care of the emotional needs inclusively of these people, of the ones that we ultimately select to go and do the internship there.
sure,
Uh, and after a period of 3 months, uh, the company makes the final selection, and then they are selected to be in a specific teams where they keep being mentored and coached. Uh, and that works. I mean,
sure.
uh, the first time that we did this, uh, that was that was in COVID, uh, in the COVID pandemic. So that was 2020, uh, and and they started earning very low, and now they're earning more than their peers that are older than them.
Hmm, amazing.
It works.
Yeah, it
Is I
sounds
mean,
like it.
who have to know how to do it, and you have to understand that. I mean, you make a very interesting point. I mean, it is you have to feel the heat, and but also you need mentorship, someone that
You
really
do.
cares about you,
Right,
and that is important. Someone that really cares about you, that wants you to
right.
grow.
That's
If
right,
that doesn't
David.
happen,
Yeah. The thing is, not everyone is thinking the way you guys do, and that's my concern. Are there folks out there that are, for whatever reason, taking whatever's been offered, and there's a sense of isolation, and it's kind of a cold relationship in some situations. But clearly, you guys have thought through it, and you got a great process, and you know, I can only imagine that'll be good long term for those people.
oh yeah,
I
yeah,
think so.
and they very appreciative, because at the end of the day, again, they just want an opportunity. So when
Exactly.
they see the process that worked, something that is very important for these guys is that the sense of loyalty is stronger with them,
Oh yeah.
because they, I mean, we opened the door for them,
Hmm.
and they want to stay. So it's fine, and they get paid better, and they get more productive. So everybody wins in a
That's
situation
great.
like this. But
That's
that
great.
is what I've said before, is strategy, is talent acquisition strategy. If you don't do that right now, you are dead.
You're right.
Mhm.
You're right. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
that's it. Kirk, it was a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, David.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, really enjoyed it, Kirk. One last quick question for you.
Sure.
Where's your favorite place to travel in Latin America? Where do you want to take a vacation that you
Oh
discovered on
boy.
one of these many business
Ah,
trips?
it's interesting. What's popping in my head
Latin
lately?
America or Caribbean, I should say.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely Caribbean too. I'll tell you. Let me just tell you that I'm taking my 17-year-old daughter for the first time to the Caribbean to for her April vacation with my wife to Saint Lucia.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
Wonderful place. Understand there's 25 other places I could have mentioned. It just happens to be they're on the agenda. But I love it. I love that island. It's really not commercial, and it's really a neat place.
I almost went there for my honeymoon, but have not ever made it to St. Lucia. It did still get married, just didn't go to St. Lucia for the honeymoon.
Excellent.
To be clear.
I am a big fan of the Caribbean side of Costa Rica, though, and also the Panama, Caribbean coast there. I think that's very fascinating, and always have hoped to see a little bit more BPO development along that corridor.
Yeah. I really like the San Blas Islands on the Caribbean side of Panama.
Exactly.
Favorite for me, but there's no cell phone signals there. There's not going to be any BPO, but that's an advantage too, that there's to go somewhere without a cell phone coverage for a while.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. David, your favorite place? Wow. He's got so many he's going through.
Thousands of options.
In Latin America, right? We're in Latin America.
Sure.
Damn.
I'm waiting for you to maybe say Bariloche in Argentina. That's a place we went together that we both loved.
We did. He did this. I mean, we moved all the team. This was like,
it's quite a while ago.
I think it was 2016.
That sounds right. Yeah.
And we moved all the people there to Bariloche in Argentina. It was fun. It was really fun. I mean, we really enjoyed that. Yeah.
Nice.
It is not. It is a nice place. Nightlife. It is all the skis resort and all of that.
Yeah, so best skiing I've done. It was great.
It was amazing.
Great. Yeah. It was a good
all
one,
right.
that one.
Well, here's to continued growth in nearshoring and continued discovery of many other beautiful destinations around the Latin America and Caribbean for all of us and our clients. So
thank you, Arin.
Thanks so much for your time, Kirk. Really
you bet.
It.
Great to see you guys.
Thanks for joining us on the Scaling Tech podcast, where we help you manage your growing engineering team. Brought to you by AgilityFeat.com, experts in staffing engineering teams in Latin America for clients globally. For more information on today's episode and to submit your ideas for future guests, please visit scalingtechpod.com.